right, good afternoon. Welcome to the American Academy of Optometry Foundation's podcasts. I'm the topical editor of the glaucoma and retina section. My name's Drew Rixon. I'm also going to be the part-time host today. Today we have Dr. Sarah MacIver from the University of Waterloo School of Optometry. And Sarah is going to be talking to us first about home monitoring vision tests to detect active neovascular age-related macular degeneration. And this is by Hogue et al. So Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you chose this particular article? There's all kinds of articles out there and a lot of different meaningful topics out there. So why did you choose this one?
Well, thanks, Drew, and thank you for inviting me to be here on the podcast. You're right, there are a lot of great articles coming out right now. And I think what struck me about this one is the fact that this was looking at some of the digital resources that are available to our patients and really evaluating whether this has some clinical value and adding it to our regimen of things to talk to our patients about. So that was something that struck me about this paper in particular.
Right. Yeah. Anything that's clinically relevant to our patients is super important, and obviously to us. So, what did the paper end up showing? What were the key findings?
Yeah, so the paper was looking at patients that had active neovascular AMD. They were patients that were being monitored already with OCT every month. And what they did was they added on 3 different home monitoring tests into their monitoring schedule of when they were not at their appointment. So they were asked to do 3 different monitoring tests. They were asked to do one that was paper-based and 2 that were digital and available on Apple devices. And they were asked to do all 3 of these weekly. And then what they did is they compared the results from their home monitoring test as to whether or not there was a detected change in their vision to whether or not there was a change in activity on the OCT during their monthly assessments. And so what they found was that these tests weren't that great at detecting a change. It wasn't as sensitive as detecting a change as they maybe had hoped. And that the only statistically significant test that actually had some correlation with the change in OCT was the paper-based system. So the digital ones were not statistically significant in their ability to detect a change in VA. So I think that really emphasize the importance of some of these more rigorous studies because the tests that they chose were ones that had been evaluated already by the company. They had data already presented about the benefit that they could have at predicting this change, but all of those studies were done with some inherent bias, either being by the stakeholders or by the company themselves. And so it really highlighted the importance of having these independent studies to really analyze their clinical usefulness.
Yeah, that's super important to remove the bias in using these. And so, I guess I'll take a little offshoot here. So, what was the paper base? Was it an Amsler grid?
So the paper-based was something called the Keep Site Journal. It had 3 different components to it. They weren't Amsler grids, but they were just paper and pencil one was to find a crooked line. Another one was to look at whether they felt that there was, or to mark down whether they felt that there was a change in their vision. And then another one was to just mark down whether if they were to look at a straight line, say on the wall, whether it was crooked enough, and then mark down those three points. So it wasn't a straight Amsler grid; it was a series of things.
Okay, great. So, that's definitely something that we could probably apply in practice. So, what would be the take home? Not take home, but how would we apply that? If I'm an optometrist listening to this podcast right now, and I'm thinking through this, I'm saying, well, maybe I don't have access to the home monitoring from a digital standpoint, but this paper based was more effective in the study. How useful would that be? Like, does that reinforce our behavior?
I think a couple of important things to note about this study was one, that these patients already had wet AMD, so their vision was down anyway. So I think that it's going to be harder overall to generate that sensitive change or that detective change past threshold. So For me, what struck me about it was that we don't want to necessarily change our frequency periods based on the fact that our patients have access to these home monitoring tests, because none of them were all that great. The statistical significant change wasn't necessarily a clinically significant change, but I think what it does do is it gives us some added tools to talk to our patients about, because we want them to be doing something at home. We just don't want it to replace what we're doing clinically until we have the data to support it. Because I think even in their purpose, what they were hoping was that they might find that one of these tests may be sensitive enough so they didn't have to see the patients back every month to do their assessments and kind of take over some of that the clinical guidelines that we currently have. So I think there's still certainly value in making sure our patients are doing home monitoring, but it's to remember that these tests are not to replace what we do clinically, that they're just to support it. And then if a patient does notice a change of vision, then definitely come in, and we hope that maybe that will be a little bit sooner, but really it's what we do already that's going to help detect these people before they lose vision, hopefully.
Yeah, that's great. I think part of it is just making sure we continue to educate them, as you so nicely stated. And I think a lot of these home-based tests in these natures tend to be more of, making sure that the patient is able to participate and feel, like they're involved in their care also. So, if you were talking to a patient, would this change anything about, I think you got into it nicely, but would this change anything, this paper, about what you would talk to a patient about if they had neovascular AMD and you were watching them serially with OCT?
I think it's just reinforcing the importance of what they can do at home to help support it, and then also reinforcing the importance of coming in and doing the regular checkups from both ends.
Right. Yeah. No. I think that sounds great. So, are there any other take-home messages on this paper? Anything different that you would have liked to see out of this?
I think the main take home is the importance of some of the rigorous studies of some of these digital devices that are coming out. We're going to see so many more, especially with the advent of virtual reality. The fact that there's claims that people can do a full eye exam at home. And I think eventually we may see that some of that stuff does get analyzed to support that, but until we actually have that data, to remember that it's more of a supportive part of our clinical care and not a replacement. And just that take home, I think, is so important until we have that data.
Great. No, that's fantastic. We still matter, and we still are the gatekeepers a lot of times. And our patients will come in and ask us about these devices, so we have to have good, unbiased information. Great.
Exactly.
Yeah, really appreciate you covering that paper. And again, that paper was home monitoring vision tests to detect active neovascular age-related macular degeneration. That will be on the link. Well, thanks so much, Dr. MacIver. Really awesome job, and I appreciate you covering that today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.